Hey, and welcome back. Today is going to be video number 2 for Journey to Nebula. Today we are going to talk about tools and fabric so that you have everything put together on your journey. So people are coming into the live, welcome. Give a little wave, say hi, and I'm gonna probably jump right into the good stuff today. Because for those of you who've been paying attention to my social media posts, unfortunately my AC is broken. And I've not been staying here, I've been staying with my mom. And so I am back here because it was too much stuff to bring over there for today's video, but it is hot as can be here, which is why I'm also wearing a tank top. So good thing you don't have smell-o-vision, and we're gonna just hop right into this and get going because I wanna get back to air conditioning, it's really hot. So thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate you being here. Super glad you are on this journey with me, and excited to continue to show you the stuff that we're gonna need and get sewing soon. So hopping right on in. The only things that are required for this are the essentials: sewing machine, thread, new needle helps out usually, rotary cutter, mat, but I'm going to show you some additional tools that you may or may not have, and none of them are required, but if they've been on your wish list or something you've been considering, might come in handy for this project. So I wanted to show them to you so you have a little bit of time to get them if you're interested. Again, nothing's required, but they're the things that I use and find super handy and convenient when piecing specifically and putting these things together. So in no particular order. Let's just start with the rulers. So you by now should know the rulers, which are the hex and more and either the sidekick, I don't have enough hands, sidekick, or the super sidekick. So you should have those because those are the essential rulers to use for the patterns. In addition to those, you're gonna need a straight ruler. Whatever straight ruler you have will work. Most of us have the standard 6x24. If you have a 6x12, we can make it work if you've got something else. But if you don't have a 6x24, I suggest getting it. It's like the go-to, the standards, just super convenient. So you're gonna need the specialty rulers and a straight ruler. And to go along with the rulers, I suggest, if you would like, to put the anti-slip on the back of them so that they don't move around. There are a couple different options in the market. This is what I personally use and find the most convenient, which is the OmniGrip InvisiGrip. It seems kind of like contact paper. It's a plastic that has a paper backing, and you cut the size piece that you need. This is left over from my first roll, and then you peel it off. And if you see, it's just like this plastic, and it adheres and is removable off of your rulers, and it just makes them so they don't slip and slide. I prefer this to the little sandpaper dots, because the sandpaper dots you have to put in a lot of places, and say you're cutting something in a small area and there's no sandpaper dots there, they're not super useful. But if you can see, like, this is on my hex and more. It's been there for a long time, still on there, and works really well. So that is the OmniGrip InvisiGrip. Can get that at most quilt shops for the rulers. Then wonder clips. Most people also have wonder clips. If you have not been introduced to the beauty and amazingness that is wonder clips, welcome. They're fantastic. I use them for binding. I use them to hold pieces together. They have so many uses. I've sewn a little basket that I keep them in. So wonder clips are super handy. And along the wonder clips is storage. So I keep my cut pieces in scrapbook boxes. Again, not required, but super convenient. If you could turn around and see right behind you guys, there's like 15 of them stacked up, and they all hold a different project. So this is my hearts quilt that I haven't gotten a chance to work on lately, but I've been working on out of all the Tula Pinks fabrics, and I use actually the jumbo wonder clips to keep each row together so that when I'm ready to sew, I don't mix up where the pieces are and whatnot. So I keep cut pieces in here. I have it for so many different projects. They hold a lot. There's different sizes. So they are super handy. Okay, so we went over that. Fabric. So we briefly went over fabric last week, And the patterns call for charm packs and 2.5 inch strips, but if you have not been able to find the pre-cut that you want in the fabric, we will be able to make it work with fat quarters. Quarter yard cuts will work better than fat quarters, but either one we will make work. And if you're cutting scraps from your stash, I suggest cutting 2.5 inch strips, because the majority of the patterns can be done with 2.5 inch strips, even if they call for charms. The 6 specifically that we're working on for Journey. So 2.5 inch strips. Sorry, I'm talking fast. Told you. No air conditioning. It's hot. 2.5 inch strips is your go-to for the Journey to Nebula patterns. And one of my personal little tricks that I do, because I have a lot of patterns that use 2.5 inch strips, I love them, I use them all the time, is when fabric comes in the door, if I've ordered a half a yard or more, or if I have leftover of that, I cut a 2.5 inch strip off of everything, as long as I know that I have enough, before it goes into my stash. And then I end up with bins like this that are 2.5 inch bins. So this is another one of the scrapbook bins. This happens to be one of my Tula bins. So like, here's 2.5 inch strips of Chipper, and then here's 2.5 inch strips of Zuma, and then here's Foxfield, and here's True Colors, and here's Palms and Stripes. I just cut a 2.5 inch strip off, and that way when I get inspired or motivated or I want to do something, I just pull out this bin and I go. And this bin is not like planned or allocated for anything other than being 2.5 inch strips that I can just use at my heart's desire. And it's so much easier if you're buying, say, 18 half yard cuts or something of a whole collection because you love it. It's so much easier to cut one 2.5 inch strip off now and put it away than it is to have to pull all 18 of those off the shelf and cut it off when you want to use it. So that's just a Julie side tip of the day that I do. And I have many of these bins. I have one for solids. I have one for Tula. I have a lot of them. They come in handy. So there's that. As I mentioned earlier, rotary cutter, whatever kind you have, will work. Fresh blade, super helpful when working, especially when you're learning a specialty ruler. If you have a duller blade, you have to push harder, more likely to accidentally cut yourself or make a mistake. So super sharp blade comes in handy. We will be doing a lot of pressing, not a lot of ironing. So the difference is pressing is up and down. Ironing is what you do when you're like working on a shirt. Pressing is up and down. That being said, if your AC is out like mine, or you don't want to have the iron on all the time, there are options so that you can go back and forth without having to do a lot of pressing and kind of do your bulk pressing, which is something that I do. So you should have an iron and a pressing board. But one thing that I find super, super handy to avoid having to have the iron all the time is this, which is a seam roller. This one specifically is made by Violet Craft. And it has a nice little handle and a wood, and it's a little bit curved. And so what you do is, see if I can show this vertically on a video. Probably not very well, but we'll try. I'm going to show this for real, like when we're getting to it. Is you have a piece that's pressed, or that's sewn, and you open it up with your fingers, and then you're going to go like this on a hard surface, and it's going to press it. Not exactly like an iron, but much more than you would expect. And so it comes in handy for those little, times you need to press something by the machine and keep moving along. So this is definitely a super, super handy tool. For when we are actually pressing at the pressing surface, which I will show when we get into actual sewing, there are some handy things. These tools from Clover that were designed by Joan Hawley. This one's called the Iron Finger, and this is the heat resistant stiletto. This one's got a stiletto on one end, which is super handy, and then the other end is squishy and it's heat resistant, and this whole thing is heat resistant. I am a big fan of pressing open, and I'll go into that when we get into sewing and pressing, but sometimes people's hesitance with pressing open is getting your finger too close with the iron, and you're scared you're going to burn yourself, because if you're like me, you may have burnt yourself in the past. So that's where these tools come in handy, because the iron finger is literally what it sounds like. You use it as your finger with the iron so that you don't have to get your iron, or don't have to get your finger too close to the iron. So these are just two tools, again, optional things that I just find convenient in my life. So I wanted to share them with you. And speaking of stiletto, there's a lot of options in the market. This one does work at the machine, but I personally prefer at the machine a metal stiletto There's so many brands out there. I love Annie's, but I can't find hers this morning. Ran away from my studio. This is just an old one I've had forever, but a metal stiletto can come in handy to keep your pieces exactly where you need them to be as you're getting to your needle and your presser foot, so that you don't get your fingers themselves too caught up in there. All right, so we went over rotary cutter, rulers, fabric bins, roller. Okay, batting. I've had some questions about batting, how much batting is needed for all 6 patterns. I will calculate that and let you know. I don't know off the top of my head, but the answer is if you're anything like me, you probably have a whole bunch of random size scraps left over. And those are perfect. Those are absolutely perfect for this project, because often when you're finishing a quilt, you have chunks left over that are big enough for pillows and table runners and table toppers. If your pieces are not that big but are still usable chunks, I'm going to show you how to, I forget who coined it, but Franken-batting, kind of Frankenstein your batting, and put them together and sew them so that you're not wasting, because batting's not cheap. None of this is cheap. And, you know, don't want to spend money if you don't have to, and use what you got. So, you know, like this is a piece that's cut off of something and it looks like it's 19 inches wide. So that won't work for the 20-inch pillows unless I Franken-batting it, but it will work for the 16-inch pillows, and it'll probably work for the table runner. So, yeah, don't toss these if you have room to store them. I have piles and piles under my sewing table here like this, and these journey projects are a great time to use these, and it's also a great time to test out your quilting skills, whether it's trying out free motion on your machine, straight line. These are small things that you get to play with. And so how I mentioned last week, maybe you don't want to use your favorite fabric. Totally okay. This is a time to use what you got and test it out and experiment, so that, you know, this is a time to learn, to make your mistakes and grow and all of that good stuff. Another thing a lot of my students have found to be handy, it's already out here, when they take my classes, is a rotating cutting mat. I personally don't use one, but I will show you how it works, and a lot of my students find it handy. If you already have one, dig it out. If you don't, I wouldn't run out to buy them. They're not cheap, but it's something to consider, and it's something that a lot of my students do find handy. There's a couple different brands out there. This is the Olfa one, and so it spins. There's another one that has like ball bearings and spins. There's a few different brands. But when you're cutting with the ruler, there is times that you have to move your pieces or move the ruler, and so a rotating cutting mat can come in handy for that. So if you have one, dig it on out. You do need a sewing machine, which you don't see mine here because I took that over to my mom since I can't sew here right now. But I think I covered everything. Sorry that I rushed through this today. Like I said, I'm hot. There's been no air on in this house for like 5 days at this point, and it is, you don't know. It's not good. So you need your fabric, you need your sewing machine, you need your iron, your board, you need a cutting mat, you need your rulers. You might want to put this on the back of your rulers so they don't slip. This is the OmniGrip InvisiGrip. You need thread. I am personally a fan of Aurifil 50 weight. That is like my go-to, and specifically 2600 is my favorite gray. 2600 is like my go-to medium gray that I feel like blends into everything. When I'm sewing something with a lot of black background, I'll use black. If I'm sewing something with a lot of white, I'll use white. You know, certain times I will use different colors. But 2600 Aurifil is like, if I could only have one thread for the rest of my life and I was stuck on like a desert threaded island, I don't know. Aurifil 2600. That's my go-to. I saw someone just asked about steam or dry pressing. So it's a very personal choice. I am a big fan of steam. The more steam, the better. Some people prefer using different sprays, but I find things lay flat when they are pressed open and when they are pressed with steam. So we'll go into more detail. So next week we're going to talk about the social media group, and I think next week I have some basics and stuff that kind of tie into all 6. I think we might do that next week. All depends on if my air is back, because that's a little bit longer of a video and I definitely have to be here to do that. And then 2 weeks from today will be the first video on one of the patterns. It'll be about cutting for Seaside. So that one is a sidekick or a super sidekick. And, oh, my pattern's not over there because I'm in the middle of making Seaside. I actually follow my own patterns for those that are curious. Where I put it, who knows? Anyway, Seaside. That's the one we're doing first in 2 weeks. Oh, here it is. And as much as I know my own patterns, I do follow them. So Seaside, 2 weeks. We are going to start with the cutting on this in 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks we'll talk about all of the piecing that goes with it. So this is the one that you want to make sure you have first, and it's either the sidekick or the super sidekick ruler. Rotating mat. Like I said, I don't actually use my rotating mat, so when it comes to preferring round or square, that's a you thing. To each his own. I own 2 of them. I own the round one and I own the square, and I'll be honest, I don't use them that much. I have a lot of students who have found them to be very handy. I think Tula is a fan of the round one for her English paper piecing stuff that she does. So if you have that one from that, totally cool. Go ahead and use that you already have. But yeah, for 2 weeks from now, you need the Seaside pattern and 2.5-inch strips and the sidekick or the super sidekick ruler. And I know some people are still having trouble finding the patterns or the rulers. We're working as quickly as possible to get them out through our supply chains. Please remember that these videos are going to last forever. They're going to be up there. I'm not quizzing you or testing you. If you don't do it on day one, totally fine. I'm here to support you. If you ask a question about Seaside in a month or 2 from now when we're on to another pattern, totally fine. So don't think if you can't get everything by day one that you are going to miss out or be missing something, because you're going to be fine. So yeah, woosah. I need to woosah. Any other questions? So if you're watching this live, you're seeing all the questions. If you're watching this recorded, you're not going to see all those questions. So I've been trying to repeat them, the ones that are super relevant. Someone just asked, what is the best way to ask me a question? In general, if you have a short one, ask it right now. If you have a longer question, email or send me a direct message on Instagram or on Facebook. My email is jaybirdquilts, JAYBIRDQUILTS @gmail.com. And I check my email regularly. I do have Nate, so always keep in mind I have a 2-year-old, so I don't check it immediately all the time, but I check it regularly, and I've got Rachel on my team who is here to help as well. And so, yeah, if you have questions for us, go ahead and email me. And if you are watching this live or you found this on YouTube or Instagram and you are not yet signed up for Journey to Nebula, here's my little disclaimer. You need to sign up in order to get the weekly emails, and there will be content in the emails that is not going to be posted online for those not signed up. I hope that makes sense. It's free to sign up. Go to my website, jaybirdquilts.com, to get the link, or it's in my profile on Journey to Nebula on Instagram, and just fill in your information, your name, where you're from. I'm just curious what countries you're from. But most important is your name and your email address, and that way you are good to go, and you'll be getting the weekly emails, and you won't miss out on anything, because they're going to be exclusives and all kinds of things, and you have to be signed up to get them. It's just the only way we can keep track and communicate those things and give you the fun exclusive stuff without giving it to everybody. Someone just asked about, do we need a set amount of background fabric? For Seaside, if you don't have your pattern yet and you are fabric shopping, 5 2.5-inch strips. So this is where that technique of mine of cutting strips comes super handy. Just go into your magic bin, pull out 5 strips, and then your background is 5/8. If you want your background and your binding to be the same, 7/8. And then if you are ever wondering fabric requirements for any of my patterns, the back cover of all of my patterns are posted on my blog. So if you go to jaybirdquilts.com, across the top, one of the buttons says patterns. You click on patterns and it lists all of my patterns, and each one of those has its own blog post. And on that blog post shows the front cover, shows the back cover, shows some outtakes of the photo shoots, all that good stuff. So there is a lot of content that is evergreen that I have posted to the blog for you to find at any time. Someone just asked if these videos the same time every week. They're live right now. I don't know if they're gonna be live. Probably not, because I have more juice to put into them once we actually start in 2 weeks. But yes, next week's video will also be live 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 1:30 p.m. a.m. would not be good. 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Next week we will go over the Facebook group and Instagram posting and all of the fun community stuff. And I think we're going to do the basics. I will let you know. Everything's always a little fluid and flexible. But thank you so much for stopping in today and asking your questions and being here to learn about the tools. If you joined into this late at all and missed anything, it's going to be recorded and posted here to Instagram. It'll also end up on YouTube. So if there's anything behind me that you didn't get a chance to see when I held it up, it will all be there. And I hope you guys all have a fantastic Tuesday. And I'm going to go back to air conditioning. So thank you so much, and you guys have a great day.